I'm sorry?
I'm supposed to do a written evaluation? Or
Oral evaluation.
is that the given on Thursday?
On Thursday this week, you're speaking. So 48 hours from now, you're supposed to be giving your speech. And then the written evaluation you're doing next week on Tuesday. And you're evaluating Don. All right? Sorry that you're confused. We're ready to move on.
Imagine that a man wakes up, ties his shoes, and prepares to go to work. On the way to work, he picks up a breakfast burrito. He consumes it, goes to work, starts coughing. The whole building's infected. At the end of the day, they all go to their own separate places. Some go to movie theaters, some go back home. The point is, they start coughing too. Within hours, the city is infected. Why? Because the guy forgot to wash his hands. Today, I'm here to reinforce your concept of washing hands and removing all misunderstandings, all the gray areas and misconceptions of what can cause diseases. So, why you should wash your hands? Number one, it protects you. There are a lot of diseases in this world, and more than half of them can kill you. Protects others. You never want to get your family members sick because you forgot to wash your hands. Prevents the spread of diseases. Bacteria usually has a very short lifespan, but the way they keep surviving is that they're able to reproduce. And most important of all, you should wash your hands because a clean person is an attractive person. When should you wash your hands? You should wash your hands before, during, and after preparing food. You never want those hands dirty after handling raw meat. You can get E. coli or salmonella. Before eating food, please, I gave you an example. You're going to infect the entire world. Before and after treating a cut. Before, you want your hands sterile so you don't infect the cut. And after, you don't want blood infecting others. After using the toilet, that's important. After blowing your nose, coughing, or sneezing. After touching garbage. Fun facts. Bacteria multiply in a process called binary fission. Basically, a host bacteria, original bacteria, splits into two over a given interval of time. The standard bacteria, they multiply under the right conditions. They multiply every 10 to 30 minutes. To give you an idea of that, we'll just use a single example where a single bacteria that splits every 20 minutes is given 7 hours to reproduce. This means that it will split 21 different iterations or different times. We use 2 to the 21st power to symbolize that it has split 21 times. What does that amount to? If you punch it into a calculator, it's over 2 million. That means in 7 hours, you can have 2 million bacteria cells. Each year, 1.8 million kids around the world die from these kinds of infections. That's why you should wash your hands. Also, a gram of human feces has 3 trillion bacterial cells. What could potentially happen when you don't wash your hands? That will happen. Common myths about washing your hands. And number one, it doesn't matter how long I wash my hands as long as I use soap. That's completely false. You should at least scrub your hands 15 to 30 seconds, according to the CDC, or the Center of Disease Control. Or for a better reference of what 30 seconds might be, you might want to hum the chorus to your favorite song. hand sanitizers cannot replace soap and water. This is completely false also. Washing your hands with soap and water is still the best way. It removes excess amounts of bacteria that can potentially be trapped between your nails and the folds of your skin. Also, girls, just because it smells good doesn't mean it's good. The harder the water, the better whenever you wash your hands. It's completely false. Heat isn't a major factor in microbe removal, the cell removal, unless you plan on using boiling water. It's terrible. Don't do it. Hotter water can actually burn your skin, which causes skin infection. Another myth is that you don't have to dry your hands after washing them. That's completely false also. You make the restroom door gross. Germs can be transferred easily to your hands if your hands are wet. They tend to thrive in moist atmosphere environment. Another myth about washing your hands is that air dryers are more hygienic than paper towels. This is false. Dyson Airblade doesn't help you. Air dryers have been shown to spread bacteria because the inside of the device can also be contaminated by bacteria, which means that anywhere around air dryers, they will spread it by air. The reason is because air dryers are more difficult to maintain. No one's going to disassemble a Dyson Airblade just to wipe down every part of the components inside. How to properly wash your hands. According to the CDC, you want to first wet your hands with clean running water. Then you want to lather your hands by rubbing them together with soap. You want to make sure that you get every nook and cranny of it. You want to go through the folds of your skin. You want to get through under your nails, because those places are usually where they thrive. The third step, you want to scrub your hands for, just like I stated before, 15 to 30 seconds. And at the end, you want to rinse your hands well under clean running water. The fifth and final step is the most important. You want to dry your hands, preferably using an paper towel, but if the air dryer is all that there is, you should probably use it. A personal account of not washing your hands can lead to, on a personal note, you can just, when I was little, around 8, I used to like playing in the park. We all did. We all have our favorite pastime, and mine was playing in the park. Whenever I played in the park with my friends, I remember bringing a bag of hot Cheetos. And then eating hot Cheetos make your fingers burn. Why? Because the sauce gets stuck on you. And the first thing I like to do right after playing and after eating, I like to lick my fingers so that I can get the spiciness. Of course, that eventually led to some problems, and a week later, I was sent to the emergency room. They found out later that I had this infection in my stomach that wasn't treatable unless I had this certain kind of medication that was super expensive at the time. Overall, don't do dumb things. Please wash your hands. And yeah. Remember, be an attractive person and wash your hands.
Jeremy, you may need this later. I don't know why I have it. You don't give it to anybody. You use it. It's yours.
Well, no, because you said you could use this as a
Yeah.
for oral. I'm not doing that oral.
So you think I am?
Oh no, I was gonna.
Oh, I am doing it. Hey, that's a nice picture. Why that's up there. Let's see. So, Dante, what did you think?
I overall enjoyed his presentation. He kept a steady pace, excellent examples, I especially like the personal one. He got some serious background into why you should wash your hands, but he also showed levity in between spaces, which I really admired. He stared at the paper for a couple times, but when he got stuck, which again I didn't mind because he mostly did speak to us, he kept pretty decent eye contact. If anything that what is it? I don't know. I was really just thoroughly entertained with the entire speech.
Okay.
I'd watch it again.
Share it on Facebook, get millions of hits, that kind of stuff.
Wash your hands.
Wash your hands. All right, I like the visualization you had at the beginning, although I do think you need a little bit more explanation, and it's a kind of dramatic sort of thing. Holy crap, the whole world's getting sick because the guy,
Yeah, seriously, wash your hands.
But I get the idea. I think one of the things you might want to point out is that tying your shoes is problematic because the shoelaces are likely to have come in contact with the ground where all the bacteria is and that sort of thing. And then you're eating a sandwich. Well, if you didn't wash your hands between tying your shoes and eating the sandwich, all that stuff that you rubbed on your hands is now going to be there when you're consuming, and that's what's going to spread the illness thing. I think that you kind of assume that people are going to figure those things out. I think maybe you could draw a little bit more complete picture. But you had an excellent transition to the goal of the speech and a very clear thesis statement. That's fine. You've got a good justification. Actually, I think it might occur a little bit later in the speech when you talk about the number of kids that are dying every day because of diseases that they get from bacteria. And I think that makes it seem like this is an important subject to be talking about. That's fine. I didn't really perceive much of a preview. I know that there are topics that are distinct because you've given me the visuals on your slides to tell me that, but there's no setup of where we're headed on this whole process, and I think you need to do that at the beginning of the speech. In the body of the speech, especially at the start, you start citing the CDC, and I think that's your primary source for most of the information. I don't remember if I heard another source that was presented in the presentation. I got the CDC at least 2 or 3 times. So it's a pretty good start on those things, but there were some things that I think you presented that needed a different kind of citation and you need to be more consistent about. I guess the material is organized topically because you do have it divided into particular categories. I don't think that you want to have a fun facts category. I think you ought to integrate the fun facts into the rest of the speech, so that like when you're talking about a particular subject, there's a fun fact that applies to that subject, and that's when you would talk about it as opposed to let's save it for its own separate section, which doesn't make much sense. The visual materials, primarily it's just a list, and in fact, in the later parts of the speech, it's just the content of what you're saying. So it's like, I made the joke about karaoke kind of public speaking. This is sort of what you're doing here. Here's the subject that I'm going to talk about, and here's what I'm going to say about it, and you've got it all listed there. A bullet point that reminds us what a key idea is, that's not too bad. The content, you need to explain that instead, and you're frequently just putting up the script at that particular point. That's where we ought to be getting more of those examples and illustrations. The visuals, you had the one funny little visual there, which I think you rushed through, and I think that that's a problem that you have with most of the visual materials is that you're rushing through them. You've got so many of these things that it feels a little bit like I'm struggling to keep up because you're moving on to the next thing almost immediately. So I don't think that that's the impression that you want to give people, that you're in a hurry to be done. Instead, I think you want to have fewer of the visuals and talk about them pretty much the way you do, and it won't feel quite as much like you are pacing yourself against the number of things that you have to show. It'll be much more about what you're saying to us. And that's the way I think that would develop a little bit more effectively. I do think that you do a nice job speaking to the audience, though, for the most part. I think you're pretty direct in talking to us. You smile, you seem to be enjoying what you're talking about. You react to some of the things that you're talking about like a person would, like a real human being making a conversation, not like some artificial automaton that's delivering a speech because they have to hit point A, B, and C, but rather you've got a point that you're talking about, and there's some things about that that's a little bit fun. One of the things, for instance, that I think that you needed a citation on was the spread of the bacteria by the Tyson air dryer. I know that you got that from someplace. Maybe it's another CDC thing. I don't know, but there were a lot of things like that popped in. That's just the one that I thought of here at the end because I was thinking about some of your other visuals. Okay. Thank you.